Okay, hi everyone. It's Erkan Ali here with Shulagh Jacobs, and this is our fourth Katra, our Katra conversation. And today we wanted to talk about what it is to be what we're terming a critical thinker, right? Or you could call it someone who's open-minded, or someone who's willing to go beyond the mainstream and start to explore what's going on in the world on their own terms. I guess I've given a definition of sorts, but Shulagh, just get us up to date. I know you've just moved house, so this is your second day in your new home. So, hi.
It is. Yeah, so my surroundings are very, very different. Still kind of, things have been a little bit of a whirlwind for the last couple of days, just getting settled in. But as you can see, it's looking pretty rustic with beams everywhere. Farmhouse in the heart of deepest, darkest Suffolk, but very rural.
That's
very
countryside.
pretty. Yeah, lovely countryside. And
so just for the viewers as well, you showed me a picture of a glass house and some obviously land where you can. So I assume you're going to be doing a lot of.
I am. My muscles are growing literally by the second. No gym needed.
Good for you. So I guess that's starting off your journey of being self-sufficient and starting to provide for yourself. Sorry, yeah. Can you hear the music? You can't hear
a little bit.
I just said to her, I'm going to video and they put music on. One second, sorry. That's family for you. They say you can't be a prophet in your own home.
I think you can be what you want, where you want to be, but at least for the moment, anyway.
So look, in terms of your journey, I have a view of it, and I'm clear that since the COVID, if you like, the COVID issue and the lockdown, it's asked of you more of yourself than probably you were asking in terms of this idea of critical thinking. Would you agree to that?
Yeah, very much so. I'm very new to the world of alternative research, although having worked in various different fields and studied lots of different things, I guess I've been used to exploring and finding out things for myself and not being necessarily satisfied with the first answer I get. And I think that is really like the first step with this, to always have that curious mind and always ask more questions, almost have like a childlike mindset. And if someone tells you something, then just keep coming back. Why?
Yeah. I mean, that's something that I put in programs as well. Like there's an innate desire to ask. We all think of small kids. They're always going, "Why is that like that?" And "Why is that like that?" And what if we did? They're really untethered in their thinking. Like anything can go anywhere, and anything goes, and the boundaries haven't been set to say, no, that's the way it works. It's all in there for you. They're like, oh, what about there's a speaker called Sir it's been a while since I've said his name, but basically he does a talk about the changing paradigm of education. I've gone blank. Anyway, it'll come back to me. And he said that this thing about if you look at children and their ability to be to have divergent thinking as opposed to convergent thinking, out of the box thinking, or you could call it level of genius. As kids, it's off the scale. And as they get older and they get more educated, it goes down. Yeah. And our innate position is to question and ask and challenge and explore, to add to our own peril. Like if you explore as a kid over the edge of a cliff, you might find out what gravity is all about. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and then we get told, no, don't touch that, put that down, that's going to burn you. Or as parents, you start just giving very trite answers because it's a torrent of questioning and understanding how the world works. And then we go through this education process, and it's kind of like, oh, we've worked it all out now. And I've worked with business owners. I say, when's the last time you read any books? And like, I haven't read any books since I left school. Why not?
I think as well, like you come up against some of these conflicts, like in childhood and at school, and as you say, you get given those trite answers, and then you get kind of rebutted from exploring any further. So those conflicts never really get resolved.
No. And I think within education, there's a right answer, isn't there?
Yeah.
You know,
You get the habit of just regurgitating information for exams and stuff.
Yeah, either you don't care, you don't bother, or you go, oh, I got it right. I'm a good boy, I'm a good girl, I fit into this. You know the types, and then maybe different times we've been those type of people. But you know, for me, it was always rebel. I'm like, well, I'm not going to believe what you say because I know over there it's different. You know, I had my cultural background to lean on because I was told about Henry VIII and English history and and I'll go, well, no, it's different in the Ottoman Empire. It was different in Turkey and Cyprus, and I knew it was different because I was shown both worlds. And I remember thinking, well, how can that one be right and that one be right? So my dad is right and my teachers are right. Oh, no, I think they're both wrong. And then I just, and I started to work out, actually, I'm going to work out what I want to think about this. And I think this idea, this critical thinking, the idea of being able to hold two, you know, conflicting or opposing, or just ideas that don't really necessarily match in your mind while you're considering where you stand on it, is a gift that I think is, or a skill that's very much, I think, educated out of us from a very early age.
Yeah, I noticed I kind of started, and I only really noticed it recently. I think since we've had this, you know, additional influx of information, you know, that we're literally drowning in at the moment. And I realized that I was going through this little process in my head whenever I came up against a new article or a new podcast. And it was just this series of questions, really, really simple. But the questions were, first, what does the writer want me to think? Why do they want me to think it? What do I really think? And it's only then, after going through that process and asking and answering honestly those questions, that you kind of really know what your position is. And I think it's so easy, just because someone has that, you know, credibility within, whether it's the scientific community or even our own alternative research community, because people have that standing already, you don't necessarily grill yourself or the information with as much vigor as maybe you would have done.
Yeah, I'd say scrutiny.
Mm.
Yeah, because if you scrutinize the information, you're starting to go, well, hold on a minute, rather than, oh, right, okay, now I've got to remember that and repeat it. I mean, especially if you're coming from through the education system. And I think it's interesting. I wrote, when you said I've got three things, I wrote next to it before you wrote it, is context is key. So yeah, right. Who's writing this? To what end? What do they want me to think? Who, you know, and I'd go probably a bit more sinister, is what is their, you know, who's funding them to get me to think what they want me to think? You know, like what's the bigger idea here? What are they, you know, what are they trying to perpetrate, or what are they trying to convince or get me to assimilate? You know, like I end up believing what they've told or they've written or told me in a way that now it's instilled in me, as opposed to it becomes, you know, a meme, you know, like a mimic. You know, you start to copy. You know, they've got a bit of information, bang, you've got it, and then you start perpetrating it as well. But whether it's accurate or not accurate, but how often do people actually stop and think, hold on, what is the purpose of this? And to actually, but I don't mean that as in, I mean, literally on that piece of information, why would that be being shared? Especially now, where most of the information we're consuming is digital, in a way, well, probably even more so now, because we are interfacing with our world through probably a screen or a laptop or a phone. Whereas before, we'd be down the pub, you'd be going in and out of businesses, you'd be talking to people, you'd be getting a kind of a busy today, you know, like, you know, every time you get into a cab, you ask the cabbie, is he busy today? You must think bloody hell. But it's like you've got that, you know, that personal view of reality. And now a lot of what we're considering as information, especially on global level, is going through many, many filters, whether it's news agencies, reporters, educational organizations, pharmaceuticals, I mean, if you haven't heard the term gaslighting or astroturfing, then you really need to get out. Get out more, stay in more, get the laptop safe. But these are constructive intentions to influence thinking, in whatever area that may be. Gaslighting is a term that we hear more and more, and like I said, astroturfing is actually starting to give a lay of the way things are. I'll give you an example, maybe be better. So I was watching a Matt Landman video about geoengineering and chemtrails versus contrails. And he said the problem is that all your stable news agencies, like your Washington Post, your Times, they'll write articles debunking something that's out there. So people that you'll talk to, I'll say, hey, Shulagh, that's a chemtrail. And you go, what's a chemtrail? And you go looking it up on Wikipedia or through Google, you get the Wikipedia answer, and you get all these so-called bastions of truth, and they're telling you, oh, it's all a myth, it's all conspiracy theory. And then you come back and go, well, I had a look at that thing, it's all out of bollocks, Erkan. And you go, where did you look? Oh, Washington Post,
That's it.
blah, 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 Harvard.
Because you can guarantee the first thing someone's going to do is go on Google, and we know that Google are not showing anything other than like the set narrative.
Yeah, it's powerful. I mean, imagine you're Google and you're on the first 300 pages of what people are going to find, or whatever. They are setting the narrative, and then the news agencies or the sources that are influenced to write in those. And is that corrupt? Is that so? I can really understand why. I've had people say, well, I looked into chemtrails a couple of years ago and it was debunked. I goes, where did you look? And they'll tell you, and you just look at them and go, okay. That tells you where they're at. And that for me is context is key. So you're contextually looking inside the mainstream narrative to work out what's happening on outside of that narrative, outside of your purview. So these things
it seems like a lot of these pieces, all they have to do is kind of add in the words far right, conspiracy theory, and that's it, debunked, end of.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of people are still buying that.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll tell you where you see a lot of that is in the alien research areas, is how they still use weather balloons as an explanation of what people saw. And but the thing is the mechanism behind it and the amount of investment and how much resources are ploughed into controlling the narrative is incredible. So if, as an individual, and I've said this before, I would consider myself a seasoned researcher because I've been doing this for a long time, 2.5, 3 decades. I've been out of the box looking at things, and I never bought what was in the box anyway. So for me to consider an idea, like, how do you actually consider it without tainting it with your, I'm going to say programming, but with what you think is the case? That is quite an ask of someone, isn't it? They've looked at the world a certain way, they've operated within these things, and you're presenting them something, or they find something themselves, which is what I did, and then you've got to consider that as a juxtaposed to what you've been told your whole life. You're going to need a certain level of, because people don't want to look stupid, do they? People don't want to be made ridiculed. But if not just the CIA, but other clandestine operations are saying conspiracy nuts, and then they release, there's well-known magazines that were created to ridicule and create, my grandmother's living on the moon with Elvis stories, stupid conspiracy theories, So you're actually ridiculed for thinking for yourself.
Yeah. So to that end, it takes quite a leap of faith in some respects for people to actually go outside of that little safe zone that they've been operating within.
Yeah, but I'm going to say I agree with you, but it doesn't have to if you trust yourself. If you trust your innate judgment and your innate wisdom to be able to get it wrong, to misunderstand, to change your mind, and have empathy, then you can just explore and you can hold, yes, aliens exist, or no, they don't exist. You can hold both ideas, and then you can grapple with them, and then you can work out where do I stand on aliens? Where do I stand on big pharma? Are they really relevant? Are they, what do I think? Not what all the Beecham's adverts and the Glaxo adverts have told me. I've seen doctors go on BBC News and say, our aim is to get every adult, treated with statins. You know, that's their sales aim, is to make sure every adult has got statins, injected with statins. And I'm like, well, why would I want statins in my body? What? And like going back to what you said, you know, what do they want me to think? Why do they want me to think it? And, you know, what do I actually think? You know,
another phrase I like is to suspend disbelief.
Yeah. Yeah.
So don't jump to any conclusions. You know, no one's forcing you to believe anything. You're quite free to make up your own mind, but just don't draw any conclusions until you've examined everything.
It's interesting. You said suspend disbelief, but I'd say suspend any belief or conclusion, as opposed to, you know, yeah, there's a certain drag, isn't there, of cognitive dissonance when someone's giving you something that's go, whoa, I don't even want to think. How many people in the last 3 months have said to you, Shulagh, I don't even want to think about it. I can't even go there. Because if that's true, then everything's going to change. And you say, yeah. But for them, it's like, but I've held these things true for my whole life, or proportion of my adult livelihood, and now I'm questioning everything. Now, what does that mean?
Well, it creates a whole new set of problems for people. When you have to like dump the paradigm and change your whole worldview, then you know everything changes, and you really have to sort of re-examine your entire relationship with the world, the people around you. It's no small thing.
I think I've mentioned Lloyd Pye before. I'm sure Lloyd Pye doesn't talk. Everything you've been told before is a lie or is wrong. You know, and the more I look at it, the more that, you know, when I first heard that, I'm like, everything I've been told is wrong. And the more I've looked at it, almost everything has some kind of, you know, almost everything.
The problem is when that happens, we tell people to trust themselves, but when they suddenly realise that everything they thought was right was actually a lie, then, you know, in one respect, that shatters that trust even more.
Yeah, shatters the trust. But I think if you're listening to this and you're trying to work your way through what we're saying, I would just say, what I've been saying since I was about 13, 14 to people when I'd argue with them, is trust you. Don't trust me. Don't trust Shulagh. Don't trust anybody. You know, reference different information, but, you know, ultimately don't devolve your understanding of the world to anyone else but yourself. I mean, give yourself that job. And if you can't go, and you don't have to be definitive, like, it has to be like, that's the way it is, because I think that has other issues. But you can be of a view of something without having to kind of, you know, like have that as that's the only way it is. You know, I'm not one for saying that it could be many different ways, but until you work it out that you're confident, you know, reserve judgment. You know, would you say suspend disbelief or suspend belief? You don't have to believe in any of it, because that's the thing. I think ultimately we're kind of brought down a road where at some point you've got to take sides.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like you're
yeah, you have to commit one way or the other.
Yeah. You know, and I'm up for that to an extent, but where you're not, you should take the time to work it through and be open to it could be very different in the next 10 minutes. And
that is the other thing. People want to be very binary.
Yes.
With all of this stuff, you know, is the virus real? Is it a hoax? Do masks work? Do masks not work? You know, all these different questions. And, you know, some of the issues aren't necessarily black and white. In fact, a lot of them aren't.
The problem is, Shulagh, I think the challenge is for people is once you've made that choice, you've got to be responsible for it. So if you're not going to wear a mask, you know, I have a friend, he has 4 children, 5. He had 4 children and the 5th one came along. And we talked about vaccines. I said, don't vaccinate her, don't vaccinate her. He says, you know what, I really don't want to, because I don't think it's a good idea. I said, no, mate, don't. Anyway, long story short, I said, so what happened? He goes, oh, we vaccinate her. I went, why? He said, I wanted her to have the same fate as the other 4. You know? So can you imagine as a father picking out one of the litter and saying, well, you're going to have a different fate to the other 4. And maybe you got it right with the other 4 and you messed up with the 1, or you messed up with the 4 and you got it right with the 1. Handling either of those dichotomies are very uncomfortable, rather than saying let's just vaccinate, and then they're all in it. They're all in. We did the same for all four of them. Finally.
That's such a good illustration of that point. It really is.
It's a real. I mean, it's easy to say you should. You know, my opinion, don't vaccinate her, but it's not my child.
And we're all making these difficult choices almost every day at the moment, it seems.
Yeah, and like I said, I just couldn't give her a different fate, or them. So I did the same for all of them, and I'm like, you know, you've got to respect it. I get it. So I think that's the key. Is if you know, if you're going to go into, I'm going to say battle, as in, because I think it is a battle. It's a battle for your intellect. It's a battle for your consciousness. It's a battle for between good and evil out there. I that's what I see. And you know, I think you use the term wielding the sword of truth. You know, you've got to work out where that sword's parameters are, how it engages with that so-called reality, according to where your current perspective of it is, and that's asking a lot of someone. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking a lot about this stuff, and you know, I realised myself how much I had to upgrade my own information seeking skills. You know, a lot of the information that's coming past us is, you know, scientific in origin. You know, I can't count the number of graphs I've looked at and charts I've studied, and you know, trying to pull out what is relevant and how to interpret the information. And if you're not used to studying these things, if you're not familiar with how scientific data is collected in the first place, then you know, it's really easy just to leave other people to do all that work.
Or abdicate.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, abdicate, or as Mark Passio would say, is to ignore it, to be in ignorance of it. You know, to say, well, you know, and then there's the whole thing of, you know, people say, oh, the science. And like, well, I know, well, whose science are you talking about? Who paid for the science? Going back to your three questions. What outcome did they want? Who's funded it? For what end? You know, and people go, oh, you're so cynical. I'm like, really? I'm cynical. Do you think I'm cynical? So you've got big pharmaceutical companies producing a product called statins, and they want everyone to have it based on their science. I mean, come on, just think about it for a second. Let the penny drop. You know, so you know, and I think that people would rather go, oh, just give me the vaccination, it'll be fine. Like there's apathy about it. It's like a devolving of your own responsibility to yourself, your life, your community, your world, to just blindly go with what you've been told. I think it's the mindset or the conditioning of the slave, because the slave thinks, well, I'm not in control. I'm not the author of my life. I don't have that. Who am I to change the world? I mean, how many times do people say, I don't want to think about things that I can't do anything about. Well, so then there's things you can do something about, and there's things you don't think you can do anything about. And that's where it stands.
We've all watched these movies where, you know, the normal person's just sitting there, and then all of a sudden the world starts to go bad and fall apart around them, and there's no one else to come in and save the day. They have to get up off their backsides and do something. But I think people have this attitude, oh, well, it's just a film.
Well, no, I think what it is, Shulagh, I think you're right. I think there's that. But I think it's worse than that. I think it's almost like they live it vicariously. You get to be the hero having to leave your seat. So you've had the experience of saving the world. You know, you watched, I don't know, Bruce Willis save the world one more time. And now I'm done now. I've had that feeling of saving the world or thinking it was all going to go wrong. And now in reality, there's big threats on our businesses, our wealth, our health, our freedoms. And people are sitting home watching Netflix, me included. I've done my fair share of Netflix watching and zoning out, a glass of wine. You know, I'm part of the problem as much as anyone, as I'm sure you are. You don't have to admit anything on, you know, publicly, but you know what I mean. You know, you watch a good film where they win the day. You're like, oh, great, we're triumphant. No, you just watched it through, you know, that empathy we have. We're able to feel the emotions of the, you know, or whatever's happening in the film. It transfers on us. You know, you ever watch the film where someone falls off a building or something, you feel like you're falling like that. That's how influenced we are.
Yeah, you get that adrenaline hit of having, you know, gone through the experience, but without any risk to the self. We all know life isn't like that.
No, and the thing is, the industrial media, the industrial entertainment complex is an industry designed to engage you and keep you entrained, to keep you there, giving you, I now watch things in a way that I've done for a while now, but there was, rather than watching the film and having the film experience, actually seeing the narrative of the film inside a certain context. And I usually sit around, especially around anything to do with Israel or Jewish, it's very, very palpable the way that Jewish and Zionism is positioned compared to alternative narratives, especially around Islam or freedom. And it's just a very weighted narrative, and I can see that very clearly. I mean, even the CIA have offices in Hollywood, and films are budgeted with the backing of the American military. So some film, you see films where there's a lot of hardware, like ships or planes or helicopters. The US Army and the intelligence agencies will have veto over the scripts. So you're not watching a film for purely entertainment or purely kind of spectacle. You're being entrained. You're being conditioned to what you think about things. Whether it's old things, new things, science. Watch the film Contagion. I mean, that's a real setup for what's happening now. So these aren't just for your amusement. They're there to keep you. And I heard recently, I think it was Thomas Sheridan in a talk he gave, said that Netflix is owned by the Bernays family. If you don't know who they are, the Edward Bernays. Yeah, Freud's nephew, I think, if I'm right. So apologies if I got that wrong. But these are people that are highly, highly invested in psychology of human beings and how you influence, control, and affect their way they think or see things. And you watch a film like the Titanic, and you will have this whole narrative instilled in you about it, because it's part historical and it's part narrative. But inside of that, there are some if you've done any research on the Titanic, you'll look at it and go, what a piece of propaganda compared to what has been presented as alternative narratives or alternative research, historical research into what actually happened with the Titanic. Second World War, First World War, almost anything you care to know.
Box sets were my thing.
Sorry?
Box sets were my thing. Like, I could literally just, each episode would leave you hanging on the edge, so you would just while away a whole weekend.
Oh yeah, what a way to dissipate anybody's, watch the birdie, take away, Coronavirus Act, watch the birdie, shut down, all the things that have been happening. Watch the birdie, have a chocolate, here's some porn, and then just carry on, and that's how we are so susceptible to these influences. And the thing is, we think we're free. You ask anyone who's in the West, and probably most of the world now, because these platforms are global, nobody thinks themselves as entrained or captive audience. And I think there's a very good, I'll be looking for this, I haven't found it, I used to share it a while back and I can't find it now, is a quote by Jordan Maxwell. And he said there's all sorts of entertainments and films and programs and all sorts of cheap ways of being, our attention being held, because the people that control the world don't want you looking at other things. They want you looking at the commercials and the TV and these aspirational lifestyles of big houses and cars and yachts and all that stuff, and keep you locked in there while they get on with the important things like running the planet and managing the global population and getting everybody vaccinated. So I think this idea of how we engage with information, it isn't just conscious, like I'm going to go out and research X, Y, and Z, but it's also how we're being programmed and conditioned unconsciously, subliminally even. It's a thing that I think we need to be very much aware of.
Because from there we go into like the symbolism side of things as well, which is a whole other subject on its own.
It is, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the one that's come up at Beyond Mainstream was something we kicked around a bit, was the opening of the 2012 Olympic Games, with all the beds being pushed out and all the kids in the beds, and like virus symbols. And you go, and that was 2012. I mean, 8 years later, we've got a global shutdown and hospital bed. It's just, I mean, ask yourself, is that predictive programming, or is it just coincidence? Is it coincidence? Is it a coincidence? Is it a coincidence? Are you sure?
You just reached the point where there are just too many coincidences.
I think David Icke on his talk the other day, and he said it many times, he said, if you don't understand what's going on, it all looks random. But if you start to look behind the curtain, you start to do some research, you start to see how connected it all is. Why this is happening here is because they want that to happen there, and that's what's going to happen going forward. So I think to train yourself in being able to engage with information that's quite challenging or will trigger your cognitive dissonance, and staying with it and exploring it. Yes, it may piss you off, but the truth shall set you free. And that's, I mean, I'd rather be where I am now than in some kind of matrix spell of running around trying to get rich and get a bigger house and more cars, and it's a choice.
Me as well. I mean, I never thought I would see myself in this situation, just going back to the land and growing food and stuff like that. But when your freedom is challenged, my instinct was just that was what I was compelled to do.
And I think it's really awesome what you're doing. I mean, I'm glad I've seen it at the beginning, because I imagine, give it 3-6 months and you start seeing the progress and what you've learned and how that will shape you. And and I think I really don't want to sound patronising, but being part of that journey, watching you grow, kind of makes me feel like what we're doing within Beyond Mainstream and doing these videos is making a difference, because it's at least making a difference to us. Because seeing you do that is very, because if I see you, I know it's going to say inside, but if Shulagh can do it, you can do it. If Shulagh can do it, I can do it. If Erkan can do it, probably anyone could do it. And I think that's how we set example. That's how we lead. It isn't by telling people what to do. No one told you to go find a farmhouse and start thinking about growing your own. No one made you do it. You that was your path unfolding, and you could have easily not done that. You could have done something very different. And you're writing, doing these videos. I mean, all of this is contributing to the aggregate, the escrow, if you like, or the compounded consciousness out there. Is we're adding our bit. We're adding our bit. I mean, how exciting!
Yeah, I mean, I've had to challenge a lot of my own sort of preconceptions and values and reassess a lot of things. But I guess one of the things is that I've never been, it can be a scary process, but I've never really shied away from doing that. But I can perfectly understand how it would be a scary thing to do.
And I think scary things in that context are fantastic, because really, all we're afraid of is dying on the whole anyway. Getting ill and dying, probably the top of the list, or public speaking apparently used to be the other one. But I think most people are afraid of dying. And once you kind of dissipate that fear, there isn't really a lot to be afraid of. What people think of you, what they don't think of you. Yeah, that shoe's a nutcase, or that shoe's amazing. Either of it's kind of, you shouldn't take either one that too much seriously, because at the end of the day, even if you think everyone thinks you're wonderful and you start buying into that, I think that has its own challenges as well. So listen, we're 1:15. I've got to get on and do some other things as well. I think we should do a part 2 of this. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing, because there was a whole other batch of notes that I wrote about abstract thought and stuff like that, which I think would be useful to chuck into the mix as well. So definitely, let's do it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think another a part 2, maybe even a part 3, because it's quite deep. I think this is quite a worthy subject, because it's at the core of everything. I think the way you engage with information, how you internalize it, and then how you act and what you do because of that is a fantastic way to think about the way we can make the difference we want to make. And in these uncertain times, I think we've all got to take a personal responsibility. That's for sure. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So listen, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining myself and Shulagh Jacobs today on beyond mainstream, discussing critical thinking and whatnot. Subscribe to our channel, like it, share it, comment, let us know what you think, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.
Thank you, Erkan, for the great conversation, and thanks everyone for watching, and we will see you again very soon.
Bye.